Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to speak before clearly what's assembled the smartest faculty members that we have at Virginia's community colleges. Smartest because they chose this session. And for all of you watching at home, thank you for joining us. I just want to introduce two folks before we actually begin with our work. I'd like to say thank you for joining us. We have our chair, Dorcas Helfont Browning here, chair of the State Board for Community Colleges. We also have Robin Sullenberger, who's a member of our state board, who actually worked with us on creating the Complete 21 strategic plan. So thank you both for joining us. Couple quick things before we begin, because in just a second I will turn it over to folks much smarter than I. My name is Jeff Krause. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Public Relations, and my job today is to moderate the session. And one of the things we've all talked about as presenters is we want this to be your session, not our session. So we welcome and encourage questions at any point in time, interrupting us at any moment. In fact, it's my job to keep an eye out for when we do. If you do have a question, if you could, please raise your hand. We have mic runners who will come to you to give you a microphone. And that's not just for the benefit of everyone in the room, but it's also for the benefit of everyone watching it streaming so they can hear your questions. So if you would, if you do have a question, please raise your hand. And then at the end, I'll remind you one last time, we have an evaluation sheet for our session. So if you would, in fact, if you want to go ahead right now and start marking all the excellent boxes, we'd appreciate that. But make sure to fill that out before you join. And at this point, I'll go ahead and ask my fellow panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll actually throw it to Dr. Downey, who will get started.
Good afternoon. I'm Kat Finnegan. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Institutional Effectiveness and one of the staff members as part of the Complete 2021 Strategic Planning Task Force.
I'm Edna Berry-Colavani, President of Tidewater Community College, and I have the pleasure and honor to serve with Dr. Downey.
And you've already introduced yourself, right? Okay. And I'm John Downey, President at Blue Ridge Community College, and with Edna co-chaired the task force. So thanks for being here today. Thanks for being part of this important process in the life of the Virginia Community College system. It's not really news anymore what the actual outcome of our committee's work is. It's one goal, and that's to triple the number of credentials that we offer in the Virginia Community College system. Sounds easy to state, sounds pretty challenging to accomplish. So what we want to do today is take you pretty quickly, so I'll be talking fast and moving quick, through the process that emerged that took us to get to that one goal. And then Dr. Colavani will talk about how maybe one large institution like Tidewater might go about strategizing to help meet that goal within the next 6 years. But I also want faculty and staff who are here to ask questions about how do you personally think you might impact this goal? You know, community colleges historically have all been about access, of getting students the opportunity to make a better life for themselves through the miracle of education, the miracle of higher education. Now, I think the pendulum is turning, and there's a recognition that getting in the door isn't doing them enough of a service. We really need to find new and creative ways, while maintaining quality, to get students step by step through processes. We don't want to create bureaucratic situations where we're the roadblock to their success. We do want to challenge them and have them complete a program that is worth it in the economy, that teaches them something. But we don't want to do it in a way that our own programs, our own bureaucracies are causing them stumbling blocks. So when we started this process, the Chancellor gave us only one piece of advice. He let us have free rein. We could do whatever we wanted, however we wanted to do it. He wasn't thinking about a particular series of goals or strategic plan. But he did say one thing to us, and that was we have to focus not on what we need as a system, but on what the Commonwealth needs us to do. We need to stay focused on that external constituency. It would have been easy, especially when we started this process. It was at the height of the recession. It would have been so tempting to say, oh my gosh, we're already overburdened. We have so many to do at each campus. We don't have enough resources. But we didn't do that. And the task force really stayed focused on the Commonwealth depends on us. And now, more than ever, especially during a recession, they depend on us, to produce the type of graduates that go on to get four-year degrees and then on to get doctorates or masters, but also the workforce that is working in the economy that makes Virginia as successful as it is. And so we focused on that as our main task. We assembled, again, a great dream team, and I can't say enough of the committee members that shared with Dr. Colavani and I in this process. We really enjoyed our time together, but also, I think, through our conversations, had incredible conversations about what Virginia needed and then what might be some of the struggles that we would go through to get there. The process, as in past strategic plans for the system, began with the Chancellor going all across the state and holding town hall meetings with business leaders and with community leaders and others in the different service areas of the college, and asking them the question, what does the Commonwealth need from the community college system? What do you think we need to do in order to best prepare the Commonwealth for the future? And that was, the data we got back from that process was incredibly helpful. Then our task force got together and brainstormed that one question. We asked, imagine that in 2021, the VCCS has already been recognized as having addressed Virginia's unmet needs. What have we done to earn that reputation? And so we began to brainstorm ideas of what would it look like if we had that reputation already of answering all of the unmet educational needs in the Commonwealth. But we didn't stop there. After we brainstormed the ideas that emerged from that process, we also wanted to make sure that every Virginia Community College System employee had the opportunity to respond to that same question. And we also included students in that mix. And so from that process, after getting that out through system-wide, 1,600, almost 1,700 people answered our survey. 44% of them were administrators, 41% administrators and staff, 44% were faculty, 8% were students, another 6% either didn't identify or wore multiple hats, and then even 1% were from the community that didn't have a direct connection working at the institution. The pattern of responses we got, you can see, really reflect the 23 community colleges. So we did a zip code analysis to create this map and laid out where most of the responses come from. And you can see that it reflects the size of the institutions and the geographic impact. Employees reported needing better student services, workforce development, access and diversity, and affordability as their top 4 or 5 categories. And I was struck by the fact that many of those, ironically, reflect the Achieve 2015 goals that we've been dedicated to for the last 6 years that came about as the result of the last strategic planning process. So it's probably no surprise. And I think the better student services really reflects the fact that our students really are perceived to need more guidance than we're able to give them with our current structures. And I think that's something we all have to reflect on, is if students need better advising to go through our bureaucracies at our various campuses, what could we be doing better as a faculty member, as an administrator, or as a staff person to make sure we contribute to that better pathway than what we're doing now? And so I think that's going to be a conversation that takes place on most campuses going into the future. We also made sure we focused on the business leaders in the Commonwealth. And so we were very influenced by the Grow by Degrees program from the Virginia Business Higher Ed Council. And you might recall that they were the group that helped Governor McDonnell create the 100,000 degrees in the economy during the last administration. That became the administration goal by the year 2020, I think that goal was set. We also heard from the Virginia Manufacturers Association, from the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and the Chamber of Commerce. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce had produced a document called Blueprint Virginia, where they outlined that in order to be successful as a Commonwealth, workforce had to be paid particular attention to. And we heard that repeatedly, that some solution for making sure that students, young people, had a pathway into the jobs that were emerging. And you've all heard the statistics that what's emerging are high-tech jobs that require some post-secondary degree or post-secondary training or education, but not necessarily a bachelor's degree. At the same time, it's my firm belief that parents and young people have heard the message loud and clear: you have to get a bachelor's degree to succeed. And so we need to marry those two things. We need to create a stackable, stepping stone approach to a baccalaureate that includes the ability of a person to go into the workforce and gain some experience while they're going through their baccalaureate degree. It's not an either-or proposition. We need liberal arts faculty on board. We need career and technical faculty on board, because what companies are saying to the governor and to all of us is that they can't find the technically trained people that need to run this sophisticated equipment, but they also can't find people who are good at working in teams, that can do a good job with oral communication or with written communication, who can compute basic math and all those kind of things. So it's a team effort. It's not just career and technical education that this plan is targeted for. It's targeted for both liberal arts and career and technical education. We also, oh, go ahead.
If I could just ask a quick question, how many of you participated in the town hall meetings when the chancellor held them? A couple hands out there. And how many of you participated in the survey that went out? Okay, great.
Well, we were going through the process. The State Council for Higher Ed in Virginia also was going through a process of creating a strategic plan, which I think they're about to announce, or they've already announced. I don't know if has the state board? Just announced. Okay, so they just announced it. And so we kept in close contact with them so that we knew our plans complemented one another, and it ended up. And then we also looked at the Cooper Center for Higher Education, which did a study of the impact of higher education on the Virginia economy. So we were influenced by several state agencies as well. But probably the biggest influence was from national think tanks that increasingly were focusing at the time on STEM education, on the connection between higher education and employment, and on the misalignment of people choosing majors in areas where there were no jobs emerging strong. So we were influenced by that, but I think the biggest influence came from an organization called NCHEMS, the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems. Ames McGinnis, we actually brought him out to talk to the committee, and he said that the governor's goal of 100,000 degrees will not be nearly sufficient by a third of the number that they predict we will need in the state. And so that idea that even if we produce the goal that was an ambitious goal of the Virginia Higher Ed Business Council, we're only going to be able to meet that goal by a third. And that's where you heard, we began to start talking about tripling the number of credentials. Those concerns were not new, and they persist even today. We continue to see news stories about business leaders saying, we need to do something about workforce. We need to do something about workforce. And I hope you all at your own institutions have the opportunity to press business leaders a little bit on that and ask them, well, what exactly do you mean by the workforce issue? I've found that many business leaders don't know how to define it or describe it exactly. All they can tell you is, we're not finding the type of employee we want to find. But if you ask them, do you need more technical skills or do you need more soft skills? We need it all. So it's a problem that I think we have to work with the business community to nail down and make sure we understand it more. So it became very clear with all that input that we had one goal: tripling the number of credentials awarded for economic vitality and individual prosperity. And isn't that what we're all about? Is making sure the Commonwealth continues to be a vital place to live and work and raise a family, but also that individual students have an opportunity to achieve the American dream through higher education. We do presentations for our foundation and for graduation and things where a student gets up and talks about the impact Blue Ridge had on them. And I'm always moved almost to tears by the stories of life circumstances that individuals had to overcome in order to achieve that degree or award or certificate. It's unbelievable. And we do that. What better work is there than the work we do. And I know all of you who've been in the classroom or staff people who have worked in an office who have been able to touch an individual student's life are impacted by that every day and just moved by that. I love the jobs that we have. We also talked as a committee about, in order to achieve this overarching goal, we're going to need to develop individual college and collective system strategies to make sure we're all focused and heading in the right direction toward tripling credentials. So we knew that some of those strategic focus areas will be, how do we meet local workforce needs? How do we ensure access while we're trying to increase success? How do we go about helping students succeed at a better rate than they're succeeding now in our colleges? How do we align diverse educational pathways to make sure that they're not dead ends for students? And then, how do we maintain affordability in an era where clearly we need more resources to operate, or at least more creative strategies to operate? I was pleased that out of this current legislative session, the Chancellor was asked by the General Assembly to do exactly what the strategic plan that the State Board recently approved asks him to do, which is expand the number of workforce training credentials and certifications, make sure that we're working with business and industry leaders, that the focus is outcomes-based and developed in consultation with business. So the timing couldn't be better for the start of the strategic plan. I think one of the challenges we're going to have is the definition of what is a credential that is meaningful and focused on quality. If we just start mass producing credentials that we define that don't have any external support, we're going to go backwards, not forwards. So there's been a lot of work in the workforce area of the Virginia Community College system to begin to have those conversations. Dr. Herndon and his staff about, on the non-credit side, what are credentials that are meaningful, and then on the credit side, are there credentials we can embed in our instruction as part of our goal of helping students get a degree that are meaningful credentials along the way that the workforce is asking us to do. IT is an obvious area where you think of, there's Microsoft certifications you could embed in instruction that makes sense. But are there other areas in other disciplines where you could do that? I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Colavani now, who's going to talk about the definition we came up with in terms of that, and also ask Kat to go over a couple of slides where, what does it mean to triple the number of credentials? What would we have to do in order to do that?
Thank you. Being a member of the committee was a great opportunity for me to bring back, as our conversations were going on, bring it back to our staff and our faculty. And there were two key words that Ames McGinnis kept repeating when he did his presentation to the planning committee. One of them was his perception or his insights that the community colleges are becoming brokers of education. Brokers to meet the expectations of the potential students and then brokering them through our process into their next goal. And the other word that he kept using is alignment. And that became one of our main conversation topics, is how do we align the skills and expectations of the students coming in with our processes and our curricula and how we support students, how we advise them, and then align their next step with their goal intentions. So we had a lot of discussion, and so as this was happening, I came back to our staff and I said, what can we do to become the broker for our prospective students, regardless of where they come from, whether they are the students coming from high school directly to us, the adult students that we work with through a customized training program, or what we've called them the career switchers, the military, the men and women who are coming back to a community college for another degree or a certificate. And then what can we do to validate our curricula so that we can make that alignment. And I didn't want to have a burden onto the faculty to say, oh, now we have to change our entire curriculum. This is another fad. And we said, no, the substance is already there. We just don't identify it as a stackable credential or a substance. And so we began to look at what are industry recognized credentials that we could already identify in our existing curricula. Obviously, it was real easy to do in the career technical area. We're now going back into some of the other areas such as hospitality, healthcare, and we're also looking at the transfer students. And there's another task force I'm on now. It's the Employability Skills Task Force. And our faculty and our staff did a mapping of the general education competencies that we're already delivering through our general education curriculum, and have identified it or mapped it against the, what was the name of the report? E3, employability, blah, 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 something. They had come up with 31 different competencies, and they mapped them against these general education competencies and found there is a 70% match. But we don't track it. So it's going to be real easy for us to also identify employability skills that the employers are asking for, the communication, the problem solving and everything. So it became a real easy thing to look at. And so, you know, industry recognized was easy. We wanted to make sure that it was portable and that it was competency based and articulated for credit. So, and I'll show you on the map a couple ways how we've done that. And what we will also do is that they're third-party validated. As you can imagine, there are lots of providers out there that will offer credential training online or in person or whatever, oftentimes high cost, but it doesn't lead to anything, and it doesn't give them any impetus or a better leg up to get a job somewhere. And so it's really important that we validate those, that it really gives them a leg up in the employment. And we also want to make sure that they pass the test for our accreditation. So we're not becoming trade schools, for-profit schools. We're just simply identifying relevant credentials that are validated, that still meet our curriculum integrity standards, so they'll pass muster with SACS COC as well. And of course that they're stackable. So the big question that we all has as a committee, what data do we have about what is you know, what are we tripling? And so Kat, with her immense data research base that she has and her knowledge, she found what we already can count. And so I'll turn it over to Kat for that.
If you don't mind, I'd like to go back to the previous slide just to let everyone see what we're talking about when we're talking about this third-party credentials. Dr. Kalavani did a great job of describing how they fit into the curriculum, but wanted to let you get a good look at what we're talking about now as a definition of credential, particularly for a credential that's not necessarily well defined. Right now we already know what our associate degrees look like. We know what's required to earn those. We know what certificates, career study certificates are. So that's pretty straightforward. You as faculty are very familiar with that. You advise students on all those all the time. But what we don't really have is a good definition of what a credential is. So a committee of workforce leaders as well as academic leaders have been meeting pretty regularly to work through this clear definition. And there are 5 components, and these will be the 5 tests to say whether or not we will actually include this as a part of the counting and the tripling of credentials. As Dr. Kalavani mentioned, it needs to be industry recognized. It needs to be one that's useful for an industry either in your area or across the state or across the nation. It needs to be portable. Can it go from Blue Ridge to Tidewater and be useful in that community equally, or at least as well? It needs to be competency-based. Are there skills that have been tested that you can prove that a student has as a part of that credentialing? One of the things that we're going to be working for as we can is to articulate those credentials that they're earning on the non-credit side so that they can also earn credit towards a certificate, a career study certificate, or even an associate's degree. That won't be for everything, but certainly it's a goal to start looking at ways that we can move students from being non-credit students into credit students. One of the things that we've seen in the data nationally is that a student who completes a third-party credential is highly likely to enroll in the next level course, in a credit course, and continue to move through higher education and continue to do lifelong learning going forward. And that's one of the things that we want to see. We want our students to be engaged and continue to build skills with us. We've mentioned the third-party validated. It's wonderful that we have opportunities to test with our own faculty, but we also would like to say, for instance, in nursing, we already have this through the Department of Health Professions boards, other places. There's a lot of boards that are doing different types of testing. Many of you can name them much better than I can, but we're starting to look at those and looking to see how we can tie the credentials that we're offering at our colleges to those third-party validators, as well as to find out what sort of data we can get from them, and are there opportunities to include other places. And then finally, stackable, as Dr. Colavani mentioned, making sure that those things that we're putting actually help students to lead through a career path over time. So here's the big so what? What's it going to take? What does tripling credentials really truly mean? And the bottom line is it's pretty daunting. Right now we're currently awarding in the academic side about 30,000 credentials a year. What we're talking about now is moving that up to 90,000. That's a lot of credentials to move forward. But it gives us an opportunity to really, it's not necessarily looking across each one of these specific areas, but we're talking, that's additional 90,000 credits. Maybe there's more CSCs, maybe there's more certificates, maybe there's other opportunities. We're just now starting to gather data on the non-credit credentials, and we've just completed a study that looked at 6 of our colleges and found somewhere in the area of about 50 or 60 credentials per college being easily identified and offered. We believe that there's a lot more than that, and we're starting to look at ways of collecting that information going forward. The final piece that we're looking for, and this is a little bit controversial, but I want to lay it out. We recognize that we have a lot of students who are getting associate's degrees in liberal arts and general studies. We also have a number of students who complete general education certificates, or they just complete 15 or 16 hours with us, and they transfer to the four-year institutions. Up until this point, that's the point that we stop. We haven't looked to see whether or not those students continue. So a component of the tripling of credentials is looking also at how many of those students will complete transfer bachelor's degrees. And this will be a component that will not only be a part of our tripling credentials here, but also will be a component of the performance funding that we'll be putting into place in the next few years.
One thing we knew as a committee is that on the non-credit side, we haven't had a strong record of being able to capture those credentials. And we thought by focusing on this goal, that would motivate us to devote resources to making sure that when we do a certification, whether it be on the credit side or the non-credit side, we have a way of counting that. And that's why we think that the tripling goal is achievable.
So we're about halfway through our session right now. There's about 20 minutes left. None of you have taken on the challenge of posing a question for our question microphone runners. So I want to just... Okay. Mr. Sullenberger has the floor.
Well, I think it's incredibly important that everybody in this room recognize a couple of things and also carry this back to their peers at the individual schools, and that is that when we started down this path, I don't think anyone would ever have thought that we would come to the conclusion that we would have only one goal, and particularly that it'd be a rather ominous goal in terms of what we'll take to get there. But what you folks need to understand is that we would never have reached that conclusion and been able to tackle that and felt comfortable making that recommendation had we not felt that every one of you and all of your peers at home are going to get us there. Because if you weren't capable and if you weren't completely dedicated to what you do, we would never, we have no chance at this whatsoever. So I think it's really important that all of you understand and carry the message back to people who, particularly people who question or have criticisms or you know, any consternation about this being attainable, that you say the board, the college presidents, the chancellor, everyone has complete confidence in us individually to help us get there.
Any other questions? Okay, we're still open to those at any point.
All right. So going back, so I went back to our college and I said, okay, what are the ways that we could identify what are we doing currently already. And you have probably had the similar conversations at your colleges already too. You know, this is nothing new. The only new thing is how we track it. But most of you are already doing the same things, and I'll show you a couple examples. So most of you are doing some kind of advanced standing option. You also do certifications. As you know, there is a Virginia law that every standard high school diploma student graduate has to have a certification, graduate with a high school diploma, having to have one certified credential. And so that opens up many, many doors through dual enrollment. That's our next area. And then all the many different kind of non-credit industry credentials we provide through our workforce development services. And many of you, who's here from workforce development from your colleges? Nobody, are you all faculty? Who's faculty? And others are student service people? Ah, okay. That's, no, I'm sure they're performing wonderful services. And then, as Kat pointed out, you know, how can we align the bachelor's programs with articulation agreements? The credit for prior learning, many of our faculty do that already. And then what can we do with our non-credit articulating into credentials and then articulating those into credit certificates or degree programs? So that's how we began to identify our projects. So what you had, the next one is the SMART Career Pathway. SMART is the National Science Foundation Southeastern Maritime Area Regional Transportation Program that we have at TCC. It's a 4-year NSF-funded program. And when I came to TCC in 2012, I saw this and I said, this is the best curriculum map that I've ever seen in my entire life. Because they had figured it out already, our faculty working with the secondary faculty for students who are interested in maritime technologies or in maritime logistics, and they began to map out the coursework all the way into 8th grade through high school completion into the community college and beyond into ODU or 4-year programs, master's and PhD programs, as well as apprenticeship programs. I mean, what better way to give a student a map and to say, you know, if this is the area you're interested in, these are the courses you have to take in high school. This is what you're going to expect when you come to the community college. And if you are an employee of a ship repairs organization, then you're going to get college credit and you're going to get your journeyman's license completed and you're going to get industry credentials along the way. And so what we mapped out is the pathway if they go from high school into the community college, and you have the dual enrollment option, which all of us are providing. We also have industry certifications, and I'll show you a map in a few moments where we've mapped out one of our degree programs, and the students will graduate in high school not only with 15 college credit, but also 3 industry credentials. And then they can come to TCC and complete, or they can go to ODU or whatever. And so here are the certifications: mechanical, electrical, welding, diesel, and marine technologies. Those are validated industry credentials, and they are the ticket to employment. So if that's what they want to do, they can go through that. They may not necessarily want to come to the community college, but as Kat pointed out, they get a taste and they feel a success. And they say, oh, you know, I achieved a credential. What's the next level? And so they start building on it because they get motivated. The other pathway, of course, is going directly from high school to college. And we mapped out the areas, the AAS in business, the AAS in engineering, and the AAS in maritime technologies. And then we worked with the employer community. Obviously, in the Tidewater area, we have a lot of shipbuilding, ship repair, as you know. And we serve 2,500 apprentices right now at the different shipyards. So it made logical sense to also map that against our credit curriculum. And when they complete their journeyman's license, being employed and the employer paying their tuition, they not only get an associate's degree, they get their journeyman's license, and they have at least 4 or 5 industry credentials by the time they graduate. I mean, and it's already there. It just was a matter of mapping it out. So the next slide then goes into a little more detail in terms of how they start. And our high school career coaches work very closely with our school districts to use the Virginia Wizard to do the career assessment, do the VPT placement testing, and then do the career guidance to the students to say, okay, if this is an area that you want to go into, these are the courses you need to take while you're in high school. So we map out the math, the science, and the career and technical courses, which they can all take while they're in high school. And in another map that I'll show you in a moment, you'll see how they move from totally high school-based courses to a combination of high school and dual enrollment courses, to the last year being primarily college-level courses, and then they move into the associate's degree program at the college after high school completion. So we map it all out. This next slide you can't see very well, but it's a very, very powerful slide that we use with parents, because we show them the pathways. If you start where it says start, again, you have the high school STEM concentrations, career technical education with the dual enrollment courses, or you can come directly to the community college and it'll tell you which course is here. But then it shows the pathway into these types of potential jobs that they could acquire either while they're still going to college, using the credentials, or while they're going through the apprenticeship program, or after graduation. And then it tells them over on the other side their earning potential. And when I go before parents, especially in this, when we host an annual STEM conference for young women, and so I always introduce that to them, because I say, you know, you could come through the community college, do an enrollment program, get 15 credit hours for probably less than $1,000, and then get into the associate's degree program and have industry credits. You could get that bachelor's degree, if that's what your daughter wants, for under $16,000. And their eyes open up. And so then it becomes a real sell. But that one column on the right-hand side is the eye opener. And then when I match it up against the tuition that they can save on how to accomplish that. So here's another one. The next slide here, this came out as a partnership between two of our campuses with the Chesapeake School District and the Virginia Beach School District. Is the school district and our faculty and their faculty came together and we said, okay, we want to produce graduates who are trained to fill the local workforce need in high growth, high wage areas. And obviously in our area, mechatronics, advanced manufacturing, marine technologies, healthcare, IT, and hospitality are big industries. Those are the high demand occupations. And what can we do for the standard diploma students to acquire those credentials, get college credit, and then either move successfully into the world of work or come to the community college to complete their associate's degree, the industry credentials I already mentioned. And of course, all of that accelerates the time to degree completion. Time is money. And in our area, we have a private for-profit university that says from 0 to 2.5 for a bachelor's. Well, this is just as good or even better because we charge an affordable tuition. We don't charge $36,000 for that completion of that degree. And that's another one of those where the parents say, duh, why wasn't I thinking of that? And then leverage the collaborative resources between our public schools and Tidewater Community College. So this one is this mechatronics. Again, as I said, the easiest ones to pick off obviously was the SMART, the maritime technology. We have already done that. The next one is mechatronics, and now we're targeting the other areas. We aligned it with the Virginia Standard Diploma, with the VCCS Mechatronics Career Studies Certificate, and then mapped it into the associate's degree program. And so again, what we did here, on the next slide, you'll see this happens to be Chesapeake's map, is they start in their high school freshman year with that pathway. We map out the courses that they take while they're in their freshman year, sophomore year, junior, and then as high school seniors, and the concurrent certificates that they will receive as a result of that completion, and then as they come to us and move on into the 4-year degree programs. None of it required any change in our curricula. But I tell you what was an interesting side event that happened both at Chesapeake Career Technology Center as well as in Virginia Beach. They upped their curriculum. They changed their curriculum to meet our standard, because I met with them and I said, there are two things that I will not allow, and one of them is we will not jeopardize our accreditation by allowing dual enrollment in these areas, and I will not go before an employer and say to that employer, that curriculum is as good as ours. So you have a choice. You either want to play with us in dual enrollment or you can't. And in both cases, the superintendents got on the bandwagon and said, you will change your curriculum and up it to the level that meets the TCC requirements. So that was an interesting conversation. It wasn't pleasant to start with, but the outcome was great. It was great. So here is the actual map then for mechatronics. Again, they start, I said in the first year they're totally high school students. They don't take anything from the college. Then you can see as they're getting into their sophomore year that they will start taking some of these courses that are technical courses and certification courses, which they'll take in part at either the Chesapeake campus or the Advanced Technology Center at TCC. You have those kind of relationships with your schools as well, either at their actual home school or at their Career Technology Center. And then we continue with the regular academic courses, begin to move them more to the TCC campus in the afternoons. And at Chesapeake, it's really fortuitous. The Career Technology Center is across the street, so all they had to do was change their bus route to drop the kids off at the TCC campus and then pick them up after their completion.
I think we have one question in the back.
Okay, yeah.
I've got a question. How did you dual enroll the sophomores at the high school?
Through the MOU that we established with each of the schools, we certified the faculty members. They had to adopt our curriculum, of course. And then the school board, in all cases, signs off and says they will allow that course in lieu of their high school graduation requirement.
And these are deemed as exceptional students then?
Yes, oh yeah.
Yeah, presidents have the ability to make exceptions to that.
Yes, right, exactly, yeah.
And I just want to add real quick, we're within our last 5 minutes.
Okay.
So if there are any other questions, I think we have one up front here.
Front here.
Why don't you go through to the last one?
Stephen Meyer.
Military.
Stephen Meyer with D2L. Where do you see, or how do you see the role? I know you mentioned in the definition of the accreditations, the competency-based approach.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see competency-based education as the concept and delivery mode potentially playing a role into the 3X goal?
It's a really, really good question. I don't have a real simple answer. There are many, many different varieties of what is considered competency-based education, as you know. We've taken the approach to start with that contextual learning is the way we're going to go about. So there's a lot of importance that has to be paid attention to the career interest of the student, to make the learning relevant to their career interest. And then we have not really played extensively in the competency-based area, but Kat has some information on that.
Actually, this is something that the system is very much interested in pursuing. We have a number of colleges. Tidewater is definitely a leader in there. Thomas Nelson, I believe Lord Fairfax. We're looking at a number of different options because, as you said, it's a moving target. It really depends on what you're looking at. We're looking at veterans. We're looking at other groups specifically. So there are 3 pilot projects going on right now looking at 3 different types of competency-based education, and those have just kicked off. And if you're interested, Megan Healy, who's our Assistant Vice Chancellor for Academic Services, can probably give you a little more information on those at some point. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, fast forward. Was there another question? I'm sorry. Yeah.
can you tell me how the student, if we're talking to traditional age students, how student development theory and this being such a crucial point in their life is playing a role in credentialing them and then getting them ready for the workforce in more of those softer skills, those developmental skill areas?
Well, my background is in this, came up from student services side, and for me, I think it's introducing them to the 16 federal career pathways that is the key. I think it is too early to make a firm decision, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, but if you examine career theory, students decide at a pretty young age what general areas they want to get into. And come to find out that the curricula to get to those general areas is remarkably similar across programs. The first year of those curricular and healthcare are fairly similar. You probably need to take anatomy, physiology 1 and 2 to become a nurse or a physical therapist. So I think it's working with the career coach movement to get students and parents a broader knowledge of the career opportunities available to them. They come to us with way too narrow a view. They've done very little to no career exploration. There's not time in the school day to do that. So our career coaching program is the best hope, in my opinion, to get the time carved out to have them look at alternatives other than what they see on TV or hear that you have to have a bachelor's degree to do.
And you know, I can tell you from working with both of these presidents that they're incredibly open to further conversation and further questions, but sadly that's the end of our session for today. So we have to...
Can I just talk real briefly?
Yeah.
This will just take 1 minute. I talked earlier about the different audiences. We've applied the same principles to our veteran students, and we actually found research that verifies students, veterans or military personnel that acquires a credential has a 72% increased chance of completing their bachelor's degree. You know, that's a powerful message. So we've targeted these areas that are outlined on this particular slide, and we're doing the same thing now for the other areas as well. So, you know, it's easy to accomplish. We just need to put the focus and, you know, really our faculty, as I'm sure all of you are, you're going to want to do the right things for your students. And this is a way to really help them to be even more successful.
Thank you so much for attending, and we'll be around for questions if you have any.